Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. You know how we do things around here? We take topics and, well, we deep dive into them. And today we'll be deep diving into the book Thinking Statistically by Uri Bram. But don't worry.
No calculators necessary.
Exactly. We're going to be like upgrading our brain's software so we can view the world in a new way.
Once you start thinking statistically, you can't stop. So are you ready to explore some everyday mysteries?
Absolutely. And I think a great place to start is with selection bias.
Selection bias, okay. Sounds a little intimidating. What is that?
So think about this. You're like a talent scout for a record label, and you see this amazing band at a bar. They're so good, you got to sign them. But hold on. What if that bar is like the place where only the best bands play?
Ah, okay, I'm with you.
You're seeing them in this like super selective environment, so your perception of them is kind of, skewed a bit.
I see.
And this happens all the time. Online reviews. Let's say you're looking at reviews for a new restaurant, and only the people who had like a really good time or a really bad time leave reviews. Yeah, that makes sense. So you're only getting like the extremes.
Exactly. So how do we avoid falling for this trap? Well, got to think about where the information is coming from, right?
All right, like what's the motivation behind it?
Like those insurance ads. People who switched save money.
Oh, yeah, those. They always felt a little, I don't know, too good to be true.
Well, because they usually are. The very fact that someone switched insurance probably means they were already looking to save money, right?
Yeah, it doesn't mean that switching will automatically save everyone money.
It's like those weight loss ads, right? You see those amazing transformations.
Yeah, but you never see the people who didn't, have any changes.
Exactly. So just remember, we're not always getting the full picture.
So being aware of selection bias
Yeah.
is like a BS detector for our brains.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, ready for another statistical adventure?
Bring it on. What's next?
Let's tackle endogeneity.
Endogeneity. Okay, that sounds a little complicated. How can we wrap our heads around this one?
Imagine a tangled up, messy knot, where it's like impossible to tell what's the cause and what's the effect.
Okay, I'm listening.
Like the whole thing about education and
Yeah.
income, right? If people say, go to college, you'll make more money.
Yeah, makes sense. More education, better jobs, right?
What if it's not that simple? What if people who are already driven and ambitious are the ones going to college anyway?
I see what you mean.
So their success isn't just from the degree, it's who they are.
It's like saying they're successful because they went to Harvard, when maybe they would have been successful no matter what.
Exactly. Endogeneity is like realizing that things are rarely as simple as they seem.
Gotcha. It's like trying to untie that knot. Got to look at all the different strands.
And sometimes those strands lead to some really surprising places. Like, the 1948 Truman election?
Oh, yeah. Weren't the polls totally wrong?
Big time. They predicted a landslide for Dewey, but Truman won. And you want to know why?
Lay out on me.
Back then, polls were all about phone surveys. But guess what? Not everyone had phones in 1948. So they were mainly talking to wealthier folks who tended to favor Dewey. Totally missed a huge chunk of the voters.
Wow. So something as simple as who owned a phone actually affected the election.
Exactly. It shows how seemingly unrelated stuff can really mess with our understanding of things.
Okay, so endogeneity. Things aren't always what they seem. There might be hidden factors.
You got it. Ready for a real brain bender? Let's talk Bayes' Theorem.
Bayes' Theorem. Ooh, I've heard of this. Sounds kind of legendary almost. Break it down for us mere mortals.
At its core, it's about updating what we believe as we get new information, combining what we already know with new evidence.
Okay, that's pretty abstract. Any real-world examples to make this click?
Imagine you're a doctor. You have a patient with symptoms that could be this rare disease. You order a test, comes back positive.
Okay.
Now, the test is super accurate, like 99%. But here's the thing. The disease itself is crazy rare. Like 1 in 10,000 people get it.
Okay, so the patient tests positive, super accurate test. What's the problem?
Even though the test is that good, there's still a chance of getting a false positive, especially with something so rare.
Wait, so even with a 99% accurate test, you could be misdiagnosed. How?
It's all about base rates. The base rate is like how common something is in general. So in this case, even with a great test, the number of false positives could be higher than the true positives, simply because the disease is just so rare.
So you got to consider both the accuracy of the test and how common the thing is in the first place.
Exactly. And this isn't just for medical stuff. Like, let's say you see an article that says, coffee drinkers live longer. Do you immediately run out for a latte?
Maybe not right away. I mean,
Yeah.
couldn't it be that coffee drinkers also have other habits that help them live longer?
Exactly. Bayes' theorem reminds us to look at the bigger picture. Don't just blindly accept new info.
Okay, I'm starting to see how powerful this is. It's like taking a step back and evaluating everything, not just the new information.
It's about becoming a smarter thinker,
Hmm.
a better decision maker.
This is mind-blowing. Okay, what other statistical secrets are you hiding up your sleeve?
You know, there's actually something closely related to Bayes' theorem that trips a lot of people up. It's called the base rate fallacy.
Base rate fallacy. Okay. I'm listening.
Okay, picture this. You're at a magic show, and the magician says, I can predict the future with 90% accuracy.
Yeah, I'd be pretty impressed.
But here's the thing. What if predicting the future, even a little bit, is super rare? Like 1 in a million chance rare.
Oh, okay, I see. So even if the magician is good, the odds of predicting the future are just, like, astronomically against them.
Exactly. We get so focused on that specific info, the 90% accuracy, that we forget the bigger picture. Like how unlikely the whole thing is to begin with.
So it's like being amazed that someone won the lottery, but forgetting how many people played and lost.
Exactly. And this fallacy, it's not just a fun brain teaser. It can have real consequences, especially in like medical stuff or legal cases.
Oh, right, like that Sally Clark case we talked about.
Right. The prosecution was all about how rare it was for 2 babies in one family to die from SIDS.
And they use that to say she must be guilty?
But they totally ignored how rare it is for a mother to harm her own child. Like, that's thankfully incredibly rare.
Wow, that's a scary thought. So how do we avoid this base rate fallacy trap?
Always ask yourself, what are the chances of this happening before I got this new info? Like, someone tells you about an investment that's guaranteed to make you 20% returns.
Sounds too good to be true.
Well, maybe it is. You got to think, how often do investments actually have those kinds of returns?
Yeah, got to look at the bigger picture, not just that one tempting number.
Exactly. And this applies to everyday stuff too, like job hunting. Imagine a company says 90% of our employees are happy.
Sounds like a dream job.
But hold on. What if it's a tiny company, like 10 people? One grumpy person could throw that percentage way off.
Oh, right. You'd want to know how that compares to other companies in the industry, not just take their word for it.
It's like those online reviews again. A few good ones don't always tell the whole story.
Okay, so base rate fallacy, it's a reminder to be wary of those crazy outliers. Dig a little deeper.
Think critically. Get the full context. Don't just jump to conclusions based on one flashy piece of info.
It's like we're building our statistical muscles, learning to see through the illusions.
Exactly. And speaking of illusions, there's another bias that can really mess with our perceptions. It's called survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias. Okay, now I'm really curious. What's that all about?
Okay, imagine you're a military strategist back in World War II. Your job is to figure out how to make those bombers tougher, you know, the ones coming back from missions.
Yeah, makes sense. Got to analyze the damage, see where they're getting hit the most.
But here's the problem. You're only looking at the planes that survived. The ones that got shot down, they're not in your data.
Ah, so your analysis is missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. Survivorship bias.
Yeah.
We focus on the winners, the things that made it through some selection process. We forget about all the ones that didn't.
So in the bomber example, maybe reinforcing the areas that look damaged the most isn't the answer. Maybe the ones that got hit somewhere else were the ones that went down.
Exactly. And this bias pops up everywhere, like those entrepreneur biographies, right? The ones who made it big.
Yeah, the classic rags to riches story.
We're only hearing about one person. All the other folks who tried similar stuff but didn't succeed, their stories are invisible.
Like those books that tell you the habits of billionaires. Those habits might be correlated with success, but they don't guarantee it.
Exactly. There are probably tons of people who wake up at 5 a.m. and do yoga who aren't billionaires.
Survivorship bias.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we often get a very filtered version of reality.
We need to be aware of the things we don't see, not just the things that are right in front of us.
Okay, so it's like learning to look beyond the highlight reel. See the whole picture.
And once you start seeing it, it can be really liberating. It helps us appreciate how much of life is just, you know, chance and circumstance.
And it makes you realize that maybe we don't know as much as we think we do.
Exactly. It's about being a little more humble, a little more open to different possibilities.
This is amazing. Thinking statistically, it's like a toolkit for navigating life with more, I don't know, clarity.
And the best part is this toolkit, it keeps growing. As we learn new stuff, face new challenges, our statistical thinking gets sharper.
Love that. It's a lifelong journey of discovery.
So, ready for another statistical revelation?
I feel like we've been spelunking through the caves of statistics. What other treasures are hidden in here?
Okay, get this. There's this thing called regression to the mean.
Regression to the mean. All right, I'm all ears.
So imagine you're a basketball coach, right? And you see one of your players just like killing it in practice, sinking every shot.
Yeah, like future MVP material.
But statistically speaking, chances are they'll go back to their normal level next time. Same thing if a player has a really bad day, tons of missed shots.
So, like, things tend to even out over time. The extremes don't usually last.
Exactly. And this isn't just basketball, it's like everywhere. Stock market, weather patterns, even our own moods.
So if I have, like, a super productive day, I shouldn't expect that every day.
Probably not. There'll be ups and downs. It's normal. Doesn't mean you suddenly got worse.
That's actually kind of comforting.
Yeah.
Takes the pressure off.
Right. It's about seeing the long-term trends, not getting caught up in every little blip, like starting a new diet and you lose a bunch of weight that first week.
Oh, I've been there thinking, this is it. I cracked the code.
But some of that could just be water weight or whatever. It'll probably slow down, even out.
So don't get discouraged if the magic doesn't last forever.
Exactly. Same with like new policies or medical treatments. Early results might look amazing, but gotta see if they last.
So we need statistical patience, not jumping to conclusions right away.
I like that. Statistical patience. Because it really is a mindset, you know? It's not just about the numbers, it's how you see the world.
Curiosity, but also skepticism, knowing we don't have all the answers.
And that's a good thing. It keeps us open to learning, to changing our minds.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. I feel like thinking statistically has given us superpowers.
Right, like decoding the matrix, seeing the patterns behind everything.
And anyone can do it. You don't need to be a math whiz.
It's about asking why, challenging what you think you know, embracing the fact that we can't know everything for sure.
So to everyone listening, keep those statistical muscles working. Look for these biases in your own life.
Selection bias, endogeneity, that base rate fallacy, survivorship bias, regression to the mean.
Question everything. Don't just take things at face value. Dig deeper.
And most importantly, never stop learning. Keep exploring.
Until next time, happy deep diving, everyone.